About the organization, we are brand new as of this year. Last summer, it was kicked off, and actually 2 years before, pre-COVID, there was the initial inklings of this organization. But through the Women's Club and the Chamber and all the sponsorship there, the OV copy, we got to the point where we elected officers in February. We have moved forward with articles of incorporation. We have our submission into the IRS for our 501c3 status. We're just waiting to hear back from them to become an actual official nonprofit organization. So that is we're just waiting on that. That's very exciting because once that happens, fundraising, donations, grants, all those things become available to the organization, and we're able to, hopefully in the near future, be able to move our current displays here in the chamber, perhaps into a museum. It would be the long-term goal here in Orangevale, and we have many donations that are waiting in the wings because this is all the room we have. We're sharing with the chamber. They've generously given us these shelves. But we have a lot of things in the wings. If that gets into place, then we can then move forward with a whole bunch of new and exciting stuff. And I think, Kay, I saw the box.
Yes, that was the Tomage christening gown. The Tomage Prosper children were all christened in these christening gown, and that's going to be one of their donations to us.
Yeah. So we'd love to have a place to securely ensure that, because the Tomage family has been here for generations, and that's a very precious donation to our organization, and we appreciate the faith that they had to share that with us at this early stage of the process. So we'll have, after our presentation, some membership meeting updates and whatnot. So if you're a member or you're interested in becoming a member, make sure you stay for that. We'll be talking about what's going on with the organization and where we're getting with all our different groups and those kind of things. So look forward to that.
And I see some new faces tonight. That was really good.
Yes.
Can you just do a quick introduction?
That's a great idea, Mary. That's Mary. So my name is Mark Ehring. I'm the president of the Orange Vale History Project.
And I'm Kay Barnes. I'm vice president of the History Project. Mark and I both work on the History Detectives group, and that's the reason we're up here tonight.
That's right. This is our research team when we were looking through newspaper clippings, articles, looking through the archives downtown. We take that all together, we put it together in articles that go into the newsletter, into the Orangevale View, if you've seen those, into, of course, our presentations for tonight. So with that, I think we'll get rolling. All right. All right, Little Schoolhouse in the Orchard. A little play on Little House on the Prairie. We aren't a prairie by any stretch, but it's neat to go back and look at all the information we can now find with everything that's been digitized. It's exciting to see the patterns and the dots we can connect as we look through all these different pieces of information. And let me turn on my clicker. There we go. All right, agenda, we'll be talking about the colony in need. Didn't have a schoolhouse when it started. A location debate on where was this original schoolhouse. A little bit about the school when it started and the social hub that it became.
Can you see over here?
Good, okay. And then out with the old as we move on to the next generation of the schoolhouse. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about the residence years for the schoolhouse that was not torn down, but was still with us today, actually. So that's kind of a neat tidbit there. So Kay, come on up here. See ya.
I guess I'll move to this side so they can see over here. Okay, this is a picture of the Examiner back in August of 1892, and of course shows the map of the 10-acre parcels of the Orange Vale Colony. Now, back in May of 1890, there was a school in Orangevale. It was the Robert School. It was located at Kenneth and Greenback. Well, the people who were settling in the Orange Vale Colony said, this is really a long ways away for our children to go. We want to have a school. So they petitioned the county supervisors to establish a school. They took a petition to them. The Orange Vale Colony representatives, Mott, Hall, and McClatchy, went and met with them, and they approved it. So what the company proposed was that they would erect a building for the purpose of the schoolroom and a hall, and they donated it for use, a 5-acre parcel, and they donated the building for use of the school. And they had 15 students who said that they would attend that particular school, and that they would have that school ready in June of 1890. Do you think we could do anything that quickly today? Now, as we go in progress, you see this little school here. Pay attention to the way the school looks at this time. This was in the Examiner. This is what they said it would look like. They said, you know, the work on the school had commenced and would be finished by June, and it was finished by June of the 1890. They now have a school board. They appointed McIntosh, Landis, and Scott. Just kind of remember those names. You may see them pop up again in Orangevale history. And then let's look at these names here. This was who was in Robert's school, and these are students that were promoted in May of 1890. Now, I wonder how many of these are going to go over to Orangevale. Let's just take a look and see. There's a Mary Carmichael, a Myrtle Canfield, Polly Williams. We have an Anthony Landis and a Luella Carmichael. These are all in different grades, but they're possibly going to come on over to Orangevale.
All right. Thank you, Kay. Now, the location debate. There's different camps on where the schoolhouse was. Was it at the corner of Central and Filbert, but was it on the southeast corner or on the northeast corner? And I decided to use a little Fiddler on the Roof fun for this. If you remember, he had the debate with somebody sold a horse, and then these people said it was a mule. No, it was a horse, it was a mule, and then you go into the tradition song, right? So I'm using that for our analogy here. The horse camp, it was a horse, would be the northeast corner of Central and Filbert. This is where the schoolhouse was, and it never moved. Okay, that's this camp. And to give us some credibility to this camp, there's the schoolhouse bell, which still stands with the Orangevale Open School down the, is that Illinois? We took a picture of it a couple months ago when we were donated a bunch of yearbooks from the 50s and 60s that we have still to go through. But this bell was dedicated to Sadie Cable. And Sadie Cable was not only a teacher back in the Depression era in the two-story schoolhouse, but she was pretty much the face of the district all the way through the 40s, 50s, 60s, and she was a legend into the 80s and 70s at least, yeah. So she said in the San Juan Unified School District history that was collected in 2000, she said, hey, you know what? It was built in 1890 on the northeast corner, so this is the northeast camp, of Central and Filbert. She also said there were 24 students in the school at the time. And then in 1904, the original building was changed into a residence by the Strout family. So this is what Mrs. Cable said as part of her recollections for the history. All right. And then in the San Juan Record, there was a special memories edition done in 1960, and they interviewed a bunch of the old-time residents of Fair Oaks and Citrus Heights and Orangevale. Sadie Cable was one of those, and she again reiterated that the first pupils were the Landis and Canfield families, which we saw. There were 24 students, and it was turned into a residence in 1904. And it was owned by the Strout family in this case, so the same name there. So in the northeast corner, the horse group, we have the schoolhouse being built on the northeast corner and never moving. They built the new schoolhouse across the street on the southeast corner. All right, now we'll go to the mule group. It was a mule. The southeast corner. So in this theory, the southeast corner is where it was built, the schoolhouse. And then when they needed to put in the new two-story schoolhouse, they moved the original schoolhouse across the street and built the two-story schoolhouse on the southeast corner. All right. This is the group I'm in because I did all the research. Oh, by the way, this picture here is the sketch done on the San Francisco Examiner. We had the Hearst presentation a while back. Hit our YouTube channel if you haven't seen that yet. But they had a great big spread on the colony, and they were promoting it because, of course, they had this collaboration where they built the William Randolph Hearst house on a piece of property and gave that away to the subscribers of the Examiner. Well, in that article, they had a bird's eye view of Orangevale, and one of the little buildings you would see is the little schoolhouse that was there in 1892. Well, the school tax elections came up in 1898. So we have the school built in 1890, all right? We have the Orange Vale Colony saying, we'll let you use the building and the property. Well, in 1898, we come to find out that the trustees of the school district have to come up with some money. And they're coming up with some money, and they're voting on it to purchase the schoolhouse and the lot in that district. So now the colony is saying, well, you know what? You've been using it for a while, but we actually want you to buy it legitimately from us. Like, okay. So they had to raise funds to buy the schoolhouse and the 5-acre parcel that the schoolhouse was on. Now remember, this is still when we have the one-story schoolhouse, the one-room schoolhouse. This is before the two-story in 1904. We have a deed record in the paper in 1899. Shows that the property, the tract 168, half of it, which would be 5 acres, was transferred from the Orange Vale Colonization Company, who was the original owner of all the properties. So you would always see the very first time that piece of tract land was sold, it would go from the colony's ownership to, Bob Smith or Jane Doe or whatnot. So in this case, this piece of property, the first transaction for deed 168, the half, was to the trustees of the Orange Vale School. And tract 168, anybody want to guess where that might be? We just happen to have a parcel map from 1900. And it's kind of hard to see in the back, but I will circle it. Central and Filbert, that's your intersection right there. And the OV School is below Central. That would put it on the south side of the street. And it is east of Filbert, the southeast corner of Filbert in 1900. So I would say it is a mule by any stretch of the imagination based on this evidence. And we have more evidence later on in the presentation to further substantiate that. Yes, question?
I just have a quick question. If I have walked up Central at Filbert, okay, facing, like if I went further, I'd hit Greenback, then is the house on the right or the left of Filbert?
Okay, so you're walking down Central or you're walking down Filbert?
Walking
Central.
up Central.
Up Central.
To Filbert from Hazel.
The house is on the left, right?
Well, Hazel and Filbert are parallel.
There's an open school now on the left, and there's an old house on the right. So where was the schoolhouse, on the right or the left?
So this is Filbert. If we're looking at the map here, this is north. This is east-west. So if you're walking up Filbert, I'll start with that, and the school's on your right as you're coming between the intersection. This current school.
Okay.
Right? The current school, you're walking up to Central on Filbert, and you have the school on your right, okay? And you have a little old Victorian house on your left.
Yeah.
Okay. It's actually,
Coming the opposite
it's on the far corner from that side of the intersection. So the current location is right here. It's on the top corner. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
You'll see it.
Yeah, we'll see it. All right. So let's switch over to school and the social hub, Kay.
Yeah. When you build a school, particularly back in those days, the school was the social hub. It was the school and it was their meeting place, and you'd see all the different things that the school did. They were there. So the school opened in the fall of 1890. Now they had a Mrs. Mary Gould is the first teacher. And for a teacher, it was they called it a private subscription. The parents had to pay to send their students to school, and they paid the teacher. So their average attendance was 18 students. And this is a report that was in the Folsom Telegraph in 1891. Remember, it opened in the fall. And if you go through and you read the Folsom Telegraph at the end of every, what we call a semester now, they list all of the students who are in the school, along with the average attendance. They say the average attendance was 18 students. And they also give what's called deportment and scholarship of the students. Deportment is behavior. And here are the students. So the students can't get away with anything because it's in the newspaper. And you'll notice here, the first column is deportment and the second column is behavior. So you've got 4 Landises, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Roses, and a Sager, Clark, a couple of Carmichaels, Wilkinsons, there's 3 of those, the Canfield, Smith, Lamphere, and look at the bottom name, Dolly Gould. I really think this is kind of funny. Remember the name of the teacher, this is her daughter. Now I want you to look at the scores. All these scores are kind of in the 90, 95s. There's a couple of 85s up here for scholarship with the Landis boys, you know, and a couple of others, but she's got the lowest scholarship score too. I think mother's probably pretty hard on her. But so you always see those. It's really interesting. If you ever have an opportunity to look through the paper, you see those, you'll know exactly what they're doing.
Oh, how about the teacher rules?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I forgot all about the teacher rules. We don't have those up here. I found from the Roseville Carnegie Library, which we're going to have a tour of that you can attend. These are the rules for the teachers back in the 1900s. You will not marry during the term of your contract. Well, now this one was already married, but normally they're unmarried. You may not ride in a carriage or automobile with any man unless he is your father or your brother. You may not smoke cigarettes. You may not dye your hair. I didn't even know they dyed their hair in those years. You must wear at least 2 petticoats. Wow. Your dress must not be any shorter than 2 inches above your ankle. When we show you some pictures of the dresses, just take a note of that. Sweep the floor. You must keep the schoolroom neat and clean. You sweep the floor at least once daily. You scrub the floor at least once a week with hot soapy water. You clean the blackboards at least once a day. And you start the fire at 7 a.m. so the room will be warm by 8 a.m.
Wow.
Can you imagine how many teachers we'd have today if those rules were in place?
Thank you, Kay. Yeah. So we found in the archives downtown, there's a photo denoted as the Orange Vale School pre-1904. That's the details we have on the photo from the archives. This is I believe this was the California History Room. It's where we got this photo. This is a zoom in of the people in this photograph. And one of the interesting things is when you're doing detective work, that's what we're doing. We're trying to figure out as much as we can about the inputs we're getting, right? We have newspaper clippings, we've got photographs, we have different legends we've heard or different data we've seen. And so we're trying to get as much information that we can glean out of these photos as we can. Luckily, we have, of course, the school report that was about 6 months after the beginning of the school. And we had the number of students that had volunteered to be part of the Orangevale School when it started. So we've got some numbers. We also have numbers about how many students there were when they finally decided to make the 2-story schoolhouse. So we have a window of 15 students to about 40 students when they finally said, hey, this is way too many for this room for one teacher, we've got to get a bigger schoolhouse, right? So that's our window for these photographs. So when you're thinking about it, it's like, okay, so I've got a photograph. What can I see in the photograph that gives me clues about the time period, what's going on, perhaps some information about, was it a certain occasion, those kind of things. So as we're looking at this photograph, we did some math. Sometimes you might watch it on the video later on. It's really high quality, actually, the photograph. It's on the presentation up on the screen. It's not nearly as easy to read, but take a look at it later if you get a chance. But over here on the right, we have this nice lady who's wearing, of course, her dress down to her ankles almost. She has a big apron on, and she's holding a book, right? So most likely, this is our teacher in the photograph. We have some ladies standing in the background. They have their really nice Sunday hats on. They're all dressed up. Most likely not students, most likely mothers of the students. We have this gentleman back here standing around. It's like, oh, well, he's not a teacher. Who's he? Well, we know there was 3 trustees when the school started. We had Landis, we had Scott, and we had McIntosh. It's like, okay, so we have 3 gentlemen that are involved with the school that are potential candidates for this gentleman here in the picture. And then we also have some numbers on the number of students. We have 15 students in the picture. So if you count them up, if you take care of the moms, the teachers, and the man in the back, you have 15 students standing there, which was the original number that had committed to go to the school. The other thing, she tested negative, by the way, just so you know. Okay. She's been recovering, so we love Pam. I'm glad she's here. So we have 15 students. The other thing you'll notice, and you'll see it in a picture we have a little bit later, the students are actually pretty well dressed. We got some really nice dresses here. This gentleman over here has got a collar on. He's got his jacket. It's almost like his Sunday best. You got quite a few nicer outfits. And then the Sunday best hats. So our theory is this might be like the beginning of school. Like this is the first photo they took when this school opened up. We've got no trees around the building. It's very sparse. We just have the outhouse back here, right? Male and female, 2 doors right back there. But there's no trees. It's very sparse. The building looks very nice and shiny. So, we don't see paint peeling or any wear on the building. So our theory is this might be the original photo, the original class that showed up. When we look at the first report, which was 6 months later, we actually have 5 more people, right? We went from 15 to 20. And the 5, there's a couple different ways you could theorize how did the 5 show up from the original 15 commit. It might be that the Roses showed up in the town and they ended up on the report. It could have been some of the 3 2s. But most likely, our guess is this is Mr. Landis. Because he did have 4 students in the school. The other 2 trustees didn't have any students in the school. And Anthony Landis, he of course was around for a long time in Orangevale. He was a legend in Orangevale. And he was, I believe, a young teenager at the time when they moved to Orangevale. So most likely, these 4 are the Landis children. This is my guess. And that's Mr. Landis right there. But anyway, that's theory. We could potentially get more data. What's that?
They've all got the same ears.
Yep, you got ears. Yeah, and those are the those are the kind of clues when you're doing the research. You look for, hey,
couple of girls with the same dresses.
Yeah, they got the same pattern of fabric in their dresses. If they're standing together in the photo. So there's different clues that you can think about when you're being a detective in history. So just think about that as you're brainstorming a picture that might not tell you a lot until you add some other information into it. All right, Kay.
Okay. Excuse me. The first social event for the schoolhouse was on Thanksgiving evening. And that was really very big for them. They filled the room, and they had a dessert, they had entertainment, and that was their introduction. And as we know from last month, they used to have church meetings, and they had all their meetings pretty much at this school for a good number of years until churches were built. Now at this Thanksgiving one, they had entertainment, and they were raising money because they had an organ in the school that was going to be used for the school and the churches, and they were raising money to pay that off. And of course, it says the attendance was very large, and so that was just the first public event that the ladies put on at the school. So I'm sure that everybody was happy. It's the beginning of just many meetings. Mm-hmm. Now you'll notice this one. This talks about the early years of attendance. Mark talked about a lot of how we looked at the picture. But if you'll notice, we talked about 15, and you probably can't see this too well, but the average attendance up there in the middle, it kind of says between 15 and 20. And in 1891, that's where it starts, and it pretty much stays static. It just doesn't move too much up or down. 1894 moved a little, but look at 1900, which is this last date over here. It just climbed up above 25 all of a sudden. So they're going, oh my goodness, we can't house these number. So the teacher was just scarcely able to attend to all the work. There's all 8 grades or more in that classroom. So they were going to need to do something additional. So in 1903, they did.
All right, the mystery photo. So this is a photo. It's on the Sacramento County Office of Education's website. This is the only place I could find it. I tried to find it in archives and other digital places. I have a query into our representative for this area of for Orangevale to say, hey, where did this come from? Do we have a source? Do we have some more information about the photograph? Because it says it's the Orangevale School. So if you go to their website and you look at the history of the schools in Sacramento County, they have the various ones, Sylvan and et cetera, and then Orangevale's there, and this is the photo they have next to the Orangevale School. And it talks about it being there until 1904 when they put in the 2-story schoolhouse. Now, when I put the original picture we talked about next to it, and you look at the picture here, yeah, a little different, isn't it? It's a little different. What was it?
Mature trees.
Mature trees, yep. So we have mature trees in the new photo.
And there's a window up on top.
Yes, we have like a vent up here versus in the original photograph. How many windows on the side? We got 3 windows, and now we got 4 windows. Okay. Now we tried to find there were news clippings where we had fences being built, and there was talk about, hey, it needs a new coat of paint. The schoolhouse needs some tender loving care, but I couldn't find any bonds that were raised to like extend the schoolhouse, make it longer, or to add the vent. But there was definitely discussion about making improvements to the schoolhouse before they did the 2-story one. We just don't have any concrete evidence on it. So I just had to kind of go, okay, we're not sure. Now, when I look at all the schoolhouses, when I do a search on old black and white schoolhouse photos, these single schoolhouses, very unique. They all have a little bit different vibe to them. All right, the steeple's different, the roof line's different, they might have different windows, the dressings are different. And so really, these 2 pictures are almost twins if I compare them to just all the other schoolhouses that I can find on the internet. So they do seem to be, like the steeple is almost identical. They both have the little smokestack in the back. I counted the slats from the top of the roof down to the door jamb, same amount. And then the window dressings, there's some really nice, you can't see them from back there, there's some ornate little dressings around the window frames, and those are exactly the same in both photographs. So it appears that it's most likely is the Orangevale School. We'd like to get some more data on it. But I didn't want to just come out and say, yeah, it's Orangevale School. The other thing, of course, was the tree. Now, this would give us potential evidence to say, okay, this is probably day one, because they didn't have any trees yet. And this most likely, and you can see how many students. Look at how many students are there. You got 30 plus students, which would put it in the early 1900s, if this is in fact the Orangevale School, based on our attendance records. And so most likely this would be like a 1902, 1903 photograph right before they did the swap to the two-story schoolhouse.
It looks like it's different. Yeah, it looks like the schoolhouse that's on Bradshaw.
The schoolhouse in Bradshaw looks like this?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's painted yellow.
Yeah, up the...
It's over there by the courthouse.
Oh, Edward Kelly?
I-
Yeah, I think that's.
I think
Okay.
that's what you're talking about.
It's got a little more ornate.
Yeah, it's a little more
more ornate,
Yeah.
Just a little.
Okay.
It looks different too. It looks like the distance from the door to the rooftop is much longer.
Yeah, well, it's a different angle. I did count the slats.
Yeah, but those can be wider or narrower.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But I,
Look at the very back by the fourth window.
by the fourth window?
Yeah, but our very top up, there's a little groove notch. That kind of is an estimation that something was added on, so an add-on to the house.
Okay.
Instead of just having a straight house.
So you're seeing a notch back there that might be added onto.
Yeah.
The window
Okay.
is higher in the last window
Especially if
too.
you look all the way down at the very end, there's also like
So
an
is the
added
front
storage
one.
shed area right here.
Back here?
That's also estimation of how they were being added onto instead of the original format.
Okay, so we got some estimations we could do based on the photograph and stuff.
The architectural style is the exact same.
Yeah.
The little bed that could be put in the front, that's easy to put in. But in the very back, that notch that I'm seeing, just from back here, that could be an add-on to the architectural style.
Okay, seeing the notch, and that could be the add-on. Thank you, Shelby. Yep, very cool.
50-foot trees in 6.
Well, if you
Well, this was 1890 from a tree perspective, 1890 to 1902,
3 or
let's say.
4. Yeah.
So we're talking 12 years for a eucalyptus tree.
Yeah, they grow fast.
They do grow
Very
fast. Yeah. So yeah, good discussion. So yeah, thank you for that. And we'll once we get some more information, we'll have some more perhaps in a newspaper article or in a newsletter. We'll update that. Okay, let's get going. All right.
Okay, now, as we've seen, they've got too many students, so they have to go out with the old and in with the new. And this is going to be their new schoolhouse. That's 2 stories, built in 1904. So they said, well, we've got to do something. So they called an election for the schoolhouse. Because remember, they didn't do taxes in those days, so they had to raise their own money. So they were raising the money by calling this election for the schoolhouse. This was in August of 1903. They got their bonds. They were readily approved. Nobody was against it. There was no opposition. And the trustees contracted with W.T. Graves for the building, and it was a 4-room schoolhouse for $3,957.
Nice. What a bargain.
Yeah.
So how about the old, where'd the other schoolhouse go? If it had to move, right? If it was a mule. We have an auction, July 2nd, 1904. And note, the building has to be removed by the purchaser from the premises within 10 days of purchasing it. You got to move an entire schoolhouse in 10 days once you buy it. It's like, wow. So, further evidence that it was actually moved, correct? J. Smith was the lucky bidding winner of the bid, and he went ahead and took ownership of it. And then we see that they're talking about the new schoolhouse and it's being built. And in the meantime, the old building, which was bought by J. Smith, has been moved across the street and will be converted into a dwelling. So further evidence, again, for the mule theory. I'm sorry, Sadie Cable, for having to diss the horse. So we'll go into the residence years, and this is, yeah,
Did they move it across Filbert or across?
Central.
Central.
So You look across to Orangevale School. This is you're looking at it.
This is what, if you were at the Central Avenue at that school, the charter school now, this is the side of it. And see how they have this concrete, those are steps going down this side of that.
Because it sits up on the hill.
Yeah.
Yes, it is higher level ground there, which is why we think Sadie Cable thought that was where the school was, because the school was supposed to be at a higher level, okay? So now it's a residence. J. Smith bought it in July of 1904, and he converted it to a residence, and he sold it in June of 1908 to a W.E. Smith who had come out from Minnesota. I had seen in a prior article that he had come out to visit out here and decided to stay. But by January of 1909, he was selling it to Herbert Puffer. And then from then on, we don't have a lot of records as to who owned the property, so we've picked some things out that we've seen in the paper. There was a Mr. Erickson who was a retired baker, and the address now is 6604 because it faces Filbert. The front of the home faces Filbert, and he was a retired veteran of World War II in 1957. We have in 1968, it was a rental. They were renting it for $110 for 2 bedrooms, newly painted. And in 1975, the person living there, the Bangs family, had a little girl. Now, we got some deed and parcel information. One of our members works for a company that can get us some information, and she found this information. Now, you'll notice in 1919, Herbert Puffer still owned the property, but it was bought in 1925, and you can see some of the owners. 1950, it was sold again in 1955, then 1957, 1959, 1960s. Not too long of ownership on some of those. Then it went to 1973, 1979, and kind of between 1979 and 1986 is unknown. But we understand that in 1996 it went to the Foreign Consumer Finance. And we understand from Ken over here, Benedict, that this was a drug house at the time. And his parents bought the house. And he knows that because, and you notice it says Equicredit there, Orangevale Equicredit. We decided it's Orangevale Equipment Incorporated. And they cleaned it out. They put in new electric. He said he hauled marijuana plants out of there. So I've been saying it's a rumor, but he said, no, it's not a rumor. And then they never lived in the house. They just fixed it up. And then it was purchased another couple of times between 2001 and 2004. And then at 2008, it has the current owners, and they are still living there, which, as Mark has said, we've tried to get hold of it, but have been unable to. And this is our postcard. We've used it before in some of our presentations. If you just turn right, you'll see the little schoolhouse.
Yeah, so this is the photo taken from, we suspect, the top of the new 2-story schoolhouse, looking down Central. And that was in our Methodist Church presentation. So if you want to take a look at that as well.
There was a family named Stovall that lived in that house that's across from Orangevale Elementary.
The Stovalls, okay,
Yeah,
they lived there.
the daughter was Linda. She was in school with me.
Okay.
And I don't know if they were renters or owners.
Right.
Okay.
That was the early 50s.
Early 50s. Okay. Great. Thank you, Dorothy. Yeah. So final tidbits, because I think we went a little long here. We talked about Ken Benedict's family was in there for a bit. One of the other, I don't know if Steve's here, Steve Wirt. He came to one of our detective meetings, and we were talking about the schoolhouse, and he mentioned, well, back in the 60s when I was a young lad, a very young lad, by the way, he was walking by, and there was a contractor that was working on sheetrock in the schoolhouse, the old schoolhouse residence, and offered to pay him some money to help with the sheetrock. Well, he went in there, and he was helping with the sheetrock, and he saw the original blackboard was still on the wall behind the sheetrock, so they sheetrocked over it. Yeah. So yeah, we don't know if it's still there or not, but it was there in the 60s. And then here it is on Google Maps. So here's Central right here, and then here's Filbert. So we're on the northeast corner of there, and you'll see the little staircase right here. This is where the steps are. And this would be the original
I graduated
shape of the school.
8th grade, 1953.
1953, 8th grade. Nice. And that would have been across the street in the newer facility that was built in 39, I think.
Yeah,
That's when they built
It
it.
was also the first year for the multipurpose room,
Oh, okay.
and that
A multi-purpose room.
was the cook,
Okay.
and my mother-in-law was a helper.
Nice. Your mother-in-law was helping there. Good. Yeah. So you can see they added onto it on the right, and then they added a little bit on the top there. So it's been added on a little bit over the years. So with that, here's the side picture. This is looking from Filbert, looking at the side of the house. But we wanted to thank you for coming today and hearing about the schoolhouse. And would love that we have such a great crowd this evening. So thank you very much.
I just wanted to say that I taught at that school, and this lady was secretary of the school for many years. And,
Neat.
one of the things was, have you contacted Schools Credit Union in regard to their archive of pictures?
No,
No.
I haven't. Schools Credit Union has an archive of pictures.
20 years ago, they published an annual calendar, and it was vintage pictures. And there was almost always one of Orangevale open in that, or Orangevale at that time. Orangevale.
Nice. Okay, so Schools Credit Union has some photos that we should look into.
So that's the
Thank you very much.
The Schoolhouse Credit Union over there?
Oh, it's long changed. It's not like it used to be 20 years ago. But if you can track that down, they had wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll
We
give them
will.
a call.
We will. So with that, we'll end our presentation, which is our kind of public sharing of information. But thank you to Kay. And now we have to do some business for the membership, or if you want to be a member, you want to hear what's going on,